The Myth of Meritocracy. The hardest working person I know isn't rich. Maybe yours isn't either. Maybe it's your grandmother, the woman who worked her entire life and still died owing somebody money. Maybe it's your mother, the woman who stretched groceries, stretched paychecks, stretched herself so far that exhaustion became part of her personality. Maybe it's the warehouse worker whose knees gave out before they could retire. The nursing assistant lifting people twice her size for wages that barely cover rent. The home health aide caring for someone else's parent while praying her own lights stay on. The single mother working 2 jobs, skipping meals, losing sleep, doing everything society told her to do, and still falling behind. You know that person. I know that person. Maybe you're that person. America is full of that person. And that's a problem. Because from the time we're children, we're taught that success belongs to the people who earn it. Work hard, sacrifice, stay out of trouble, play by the rules. And eventually, you'll get what you deserve. That's the promise. But see, promises are funny things. Because eventually, reality shows up and she starts asking questions. Questions the story can't answer. Like, why some of the hardest working people in this country are one emergency away from disaster. Why the people cleaning the buildings make less than the people sitting in them. Why the people caring for the sick struggle to afford health care. Why the people feeding Americans struggle to feed themselves. And let's be honest, we don't like those questions. Because those questions force us to confront something uncomfortable. If hard work alone determines success, the hardest working people in America would be the richest. But they're not. Not even close. Not by a long shot. And once you see that, it's hard to unsee it. Tonight we're talking about meritocracy. The promise. The myth. And the asterisk. Welcome to You Oughta Know Betta. I'm AJ Miller. This is the podcast where we read the fine print, check the receipts, and investigate the asterisk. Let's start with the story. Because meritocracy is one of the most powerful stories America has ever told itself. Work hard, make good choices, stay disciplined, success will follow. It's simple. It's hopeful. And if we're being honest, it's comfortable. Because if success is earned, then life makes sense. The winners earned it, the losers didn't. The rich deserved it, the struggling need to work harder. It's clean, it's neat, it's easy. But there's a problem. The numbers keep interrupting the story. And the answers to those questions don't add up. So let's talk about wealth. Not income, wealth. Because they're not the same thing. Income is what comes into your house. Wealth is what stays there. The home, the savings accounts, the investments, the inheritance. The thing that catches you when life decides to throw a punch. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 survey of consumer finances, the median white family held approximately $285,000 in wealth. The median black family held approximately $45,000. That's almost a $240,000 gap. And before y'all come in my comments saying, well, maybe one group just worked harder, let's stop right there. Because wealth isn't just earned, it's inherited. Which raises a question that meritocracy has always struggled to answer. What exactly did a newborn do to earn an inheritance? Nothing. A child born into wealth didn't earn wealth. A child born into poverty didn't earn poverty. Yet both inherit consequences before they can read, before they can walk, before they can make a single decision for themselves. And that's where the story starts cracking. Because meritocracy asks us to focus on effort. Reality keeps forcing us to acknowledge access. And this is where people usually say, that was a long time ago. Redlining was decades ago. Segregation was decades ago. Housing discrimination was decades ago. Fair enough. But let's talk about why that matters. Because when most people hear the word history, they think about the past. What they don't realize is that history has a habit of showing up in the present. Imagine two families, 1950. One family is allowed to buy a home in a growing neighborhood, bustling with neighbors and suburbs and businesses and doctor's offices and amazing infrastructure. The other family is denied access to that same opportunity. The first family builds equity. The home increases in value. That equity helps pay for college, helps start businesses, helps survive emergencies, helps create inheritances. The second family never gets that same foothold. Now fast forward 70 years. We're not looking at two individuals anymore. We're now looking at generations. One family has assets that can be passed down. The other family has spent generations trying to build what the first family was allowed to accumulate. The law changed. The consequences didn't. Because wealth has grandchildren, but so does poverty. History doesn't have to be alive to affect the present. Its receipts are already here. And those receipts show up in the numbers. Think about home ownership. For most middle-class families, a home isn't just a place to live. It's the largest generational wealth building tool they will ever own. According to census data, almost 74% of white households own their homes. For black households, it's about 45%. That's nearly a 30-point gap in one of the primary ways Americans build wealth. And that gap didn't appear out of thin air. History leaves fingerprints, even when the person who left them is long gone. Now let's talk about opportunity. Because meritocracy assumes opportunity follows talent. Work hard, get qualified, the doors open, that's the story. But what happens if the door is making decisions before it even knows your qualifications? In 2003, economists Mary Ann Bertrand and Cindile Mulanathan conducted one of the most influential hiring studies in modern America. They sent thousands of resumes to employers. Same education, same experience, same qualifications. The only thing they changed was the name. Some resumes had names like Emily and Greg. Others had names like Lakeisha and Jamal. The results were very, very difficult to ignore. Resumes with traditionally white-sounding names received approximately 50% more callbacks than identical resumes with traditionally black-sounding names. Same resume, same qualifications, different opportunity. Think about what that means. The interview wasn't lost because of performance. The interview was lost before performance ever entered the room. And before somebody says, well, that study is 20 years old. Researchers have continued studying hiring discrimination for years and have repeatedly found evidence that race can influence hiring outcomes. That's important because meritocracy assumes opportunity arrives after performance. But if opportunity is being filtered before performance is evaluated, then effort isn't the only variable in this equation. Now, is it? And as a black woman, this conversation has always felt strange to me. Because I didn't get the benefit of being told, just work hard and everything will come to you. I was told I had to work hard. And then I had to work harder. And then I had to collect credentials. And then in the process of collecting those credentials, I had to be better than everyone else in my class to receive just a little bit of what they may receive. Then I had to collect experience. But in that experience, I had to make sure that my hair didn't offend people. That I wasn't the angry black woman in the room. That I double-checked everything that I said so that my ideas would be valued. Then I learned something that nobody ever mentioned in the sweet motivational speeches that they tried to teach us in school. Sometimes the obstacle isn't effort. The obstacle is perception. Sometimes you're not being evaluated against the standard. You're being evaluated against the stereotype. And those are not the same thing. Black women working full time typically earned about 66 to 69 cents for every dollar earned by white men. That's not just a wage gap, it's a savings gap, an investment gap, a retirement gap, an inheritance gap, a generational wealth gap. Every missing dollar today compounds tomorrow. And it's my job to figure out how to fill in the gap. But if I say that my opportunities don't look the same, then you call me a victim. You say that I'm oppressed. You tell me I'm looking for a handout. When I just want to make sure that my kids have the same opportunities that you get to sit in your ivory tower and complain about me asking for. And that's why meritocracy can feel so frustrating to people like me. Because when the outcomes don't match the effort, the story starts demanding explanations from the wrong people. Instead of asking why the barriers exist, it asks why the person didn't overcome them. And maybe that's the question that meritocracy never wants to answer. Because if hard work is the key, how do we explain the people working the hardest and receiving the least? You remember the home health care aide, the nursing assistant, the warehouse worker, the farm laborer, the people whose bodies are carrying entire industries on their backs. If effort alone determined outcomes, many of those people would be among the wealthiest Americans alive. Instead, millions are one emergency away from financial crisis. According to Federal Reserve data, a significant share of Americans would struggle to cover an unexpected $400 expense without borrowing money, selling something, or missing a payment. Think about that. One car repair, one ER visit, one broken appliance, and the entire financial picture changes. Does that sound like a country where hard work guarantees security? Or does it sound like a country where security is distributed unevenly? Now, don't misunderstand me. Effort matters. Education and discipline matter. Good decisions matter. Nobody is saying otherwise. The problem is that Americans often talk about effort as though it is the only variable, as though opportunity is evenly distributed, as though history, wealth, and networks don't matter, as though some people aren't spending their entire lives pushing against barriers other people never have to see. Oh, and here's my favorite contradiction. America has no problem in acknowledging inheritance. No problem acknowledging old money, family connections, legacy admissions, networking, nepotism. But somehow, the moment somebody points out structural barriers, we're told everybody starts on the same playing field. Really? Because that sounds less like meritocracy and more like selective memory. Meritocracy is the only game where people insist the race is fair after some runners were allowed to start 3 laps ahead. And somehow, pointing out the head start becomes more controversial than the head start itself. Maybe that's why this conversation needs to happen. Why it matters. Because the myth of meritocracy doesn't just shape economics. It shapes how we see people. If success is always earned, then struggle must be earned too. If wealth is always deserved, then poverty must be deserved. If outcomes tell us everything, then we never have to investigate the process. We never have to ask who got opportunities, who got obstacles, who got second chances, who got written off. We only look at the scoreboard. We never examine the game. The hardest working person I know still isn't rich. Maybe yours isn't either. And maybe that's where we should leave this conversation. Not with an answer, with a question. If hard work alone determines success, why are some of the hardest working people in America still struggling? And if the answer is an effort, what the hell is it? I'm AJ Miller, and this has been You Oughta Know Betta, the podcast where we read the fine print, check the receipts, and investigate the asterisk. Good night.